Hey everyone, I am your astrologer Wonder Girl, helping you to live in tune with the natural cycles of the moon. This is your astrology horoscope for the full moon in Pisces, which occurs on Saturday, September 10th, 2022 at 5:59 a.m. Eastern Time or 2:59 a.m. Pacific Time. Now, what I think this full moon is really all about is about us trying to cultivate more trust, hope, and faith that our situations and whatever we're currently working on in life will eventually turn out well whenever the divine says that it's time. But us really having difficulty, I think, getting that trust, hope, and faith and then holding on to it here once we do start to come around to it. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. If you want to hear more about that, please do stay tuned because I'm going to hop into it right now. In order to get started, what I like to do first, though, is just place on the chart what it is that I'm referring to here so that you can see it and follow along with me. So let me do that now. This video is for the full moon in Pisces. Because of that, I've adjusted the chart accordingly. I know that because I've got the moon here in Pisces, 17 degrees, exactly opposite the sun here in Virgo, also at 17 degrees. And when the moon opposes the sun here, that is what is considered here a full moon, okay? What are full moons all about? Let's talk about that. Full moons are all about stepping into something that we've been working on for quite some time. Not only that, but it's also about bringing things to completion or fullness, because that is when the moon is the fullest here in the sky. Not only that, but I should also note as well that full moons also tend to be about bringing something to light, seeing something or getting some information or insight that we didn't see before as well, because that is when the moon is the brightest in the sky as well that's going on. Not only that, but other things that I should note too is that full moons do tend to also be about choices in some kind of way, with it being a function of an opposition, which is about choice and about balance, balancing things as well. That could also come into play here in some kind of way as well. Okay, now, what are we stepping into at this full moon or trying to get more insight on, illumination or complete or balance our situations with and choose to do here? Well, that has to do with Pisces here because that is the sign that the full moon is in. What is Pisces all about? Well, Pisces is about a few things. One of the things that it's about is a lot about faith, hope, and trust, especially in the divine, angels, God, spirit guides, the universe, that kind of thing. It's having faith, trust in that, and that they're going to be taking care of us in whatever way they feel is fit here as we move forward. So what that means to me is that one of the few things that this full moon in Pisces is really all about is about us trying to get illumination here, that God and the divine is on our side here and the angels, and to choose to have more faith and trust that they are going to take care of us here as we move forward. Okay? Not only, and to balance our situations with that. Okay, not only is Pisces about that, but I also do see it as well about like the bigger picture, so to speak, seeing things from a bigger, wiser, higher, right, more divine point of view as well. So not only at this full moon in Pisces are we really trying to step into more hope and faith and trust that God and the divine and the angels know best and are going to take care of us. But I think we're also trying to see and step into and choose and balance our situations with like a higher, wiser perspective, big picture perspective of our situations and what is going on here. Right? Not only that, but I also need to note too that Pisces, being the last sign of the zodiac, is also one of kindness and compassion, since it's been around the block a bit and knows a few things. It's about kindness and compassion here and forgiveness to ourselves, but also to others, I believe, at this time as well. So what that means to me is that not only here at this full moon in Pisces are we really trying to step into more trust, hope, and faith in the divine, and that the divine has got our back, and more of just like a higher and wiser perspective here about our situations and what's going on. But I think we're also trying to step into or balance our situations with more compassion, kindness, and forgiveness for ourselves and for the other people that we are dealing with here at this time, trying to figure things out. And I think the last thing that I'm going to mention here about Pisces is that Pisces also has to do with calm and peace a lot of times, and also resting as well. So not only do I believe that this full moon in Pisces here is about us really just trying to cultivate more trust and hope and faith in the God, spirit, universe, the divine, angels, our spirit guides, to like know what's best and to carry us through this here, and to get that divine higher perspective, bigger picture perspective on our situations, and to practice more kindness and compassion towards ourselves and other people that we're dealing with here. But I think also to cultivate more calm and peace in the midst of everything that's going on here, and an inner sense and posture of rest and ease here as we move forward, so that we're not stressing ourselves out about whatever is going on here in our situations. And also with the Pisces, can heal internally as we move onwards. Okay. And I think that's all that I want to mention here for the time being about like the major themes here of this full moon in Pisces. Before I move forward in time, though, to explain more specifically how this is going to play out, though, what I like to do is go backwards in time for a minute before I go forwards. And I like to go backwards in time before I go forwards in order to better give you the context of like how we got here and of why this theme is now coming up for us to feel, live through, and experience. Okay, and to go back in time, I'm just going to go back briefly to like a few random points that I think are relevant. And I think what I'm going to go back to is going to be the beginning of 2020, between like January to April, I suppose. Around that time, Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter all came conjunct here around the later degrees of Capricorn. Here. Now that's a very significant alignment because Saturn and Pluto in particular only come conjunct about every 35 years, not always in the same sign here and not always with Jupiter involved. Not only is it significant because of that, but because like Saturn and Pluto are heavy hitters here in astrology and don't always bring great things. So what does that mean to me? Well, what that means to me is that from about January to April of 2020, we started to realize that we need to make big Jupiter change Pluto and the structure of our lives, Saturn and Capricorn, which are correlated, so that we can overcome old chapters of our life that may have persisted for 35 years, many decades prior, that we did not like, so that we could step into new and different and better circumstances that are more in alignment with us after this point. Okay. And I think that that was a process that started then and really took us, to be honest, about like 2 years to do, which leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which occurred this year. And it was a new moon solar eclipse in Taurus, right about here in April. Here, maybe I'll write it on the chart, April of 2022. Okay. What was that about? Well, at that new moon solar eclipse in Taurus in April of this year, I think what happened is that we finally had ended the old chapter in life and gotten rid of all those stuff that it is that we didn't want, and more fully stepped into a new and better experience of life in a more tangible way that we can see, touch, and feel, because Taurus is an earth sign and very tactile here, and in a way that we also felt was a bit more abundant here, with Taurus being very fertile as well for our future, which I really, really liked a lot. Okay, it was good. So finally, all our efforts from April of 2020 started to pay off in April 2022 for different experiences to come together. Okay, which was very, very good. But even though we were in a different and better experience in April of this year, I think we still had difficulty really moving that better experience of life forward to make it even more noticeable and even more abundant in the way that we might have liked, especially because of the next alignment I want to mention, which occurred 2 weeks after that, about May of 2022. And at that time, we had a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio, eclipses, which are also a big deal. And that full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio, I believe, was about us feeling blocked now from moving forward in this new and better chapter of life that we were supposedly in, and feeling blocked from really moving forward and making things manifest, which was a bit confusing here for us. And because at that solar lunar eclipse in Scorpio, we were feeling blocked from moving forward, I think Spirit started to step in, because Scorpio can be very psychic and very spiritual, to really give us insights about why we were still struggling to move on. And I think the insights that Spirit gave us at that lunar eclipse in May of 2022 is that the reason why we were struggling to move forward now with like a brand new and better experience of life that had arrived is because we were still trying to do it by the old way, and by the old mindset, and by the old behaviors, which were behaviors that were more tumultuous, constant change, constant spending money, constantly getting involved with other people, and constantly, indulging perhaps some of our intense, uncomfortable emotions. Here, that was the problem. Not only did Spirit tell us that in May of 2022, but I also think think that Spirit and the divine told us that if we are to make our situations move forward after that point, that we need to adopt a new mindset and new behaviors here that were healthier. And those mindsets and behaviors are ones that are slower, where we go about life in a slower, more stable, more secure way, where we're saving money and not spending as much, and where we're more self-reliant and not getting intertwined with all these people all the time here, and where our emotions are in more of a balanced state here as we move forward. Because building something new, which is what we're doing, requires an entirely different skill set than ending something old. Okay. That was going on here. And that's what came up at that time. And I think that was a beautiful insight. But even though it was a beautiful insight, I think it took us quite a few months to really get that through our heads and figure out like entirely what that meant for us and ourselves and our situations. Okay. And I think it took us really until August of this year. August, when we had the new moon in Leo, like what was that now? Like a month or two ago, right about here. And when we had another significant alignment going on, Mars, Uranus conjunct the North Node in Taurus at that same time, which is also very rare. And I think what August 2022 is all about was us finally realizing and getting it through our heads that yes, we're in a new experience of life and we need new behaviors that are slow, stable, secure, self-reliant here, thrifty, saving money, more in tune with our needs and values. Not only in August 2022 that we started to get it through our head, that this is what needs to happen, but I think we also started to initiate here more things in our life that perhaps were related to things we wanted to do in April of this year. We started to initiate more things we wanted to do in our lives in a slow, stable, and secure way here in order to maneuver them forward and to put in the time and the effort, especially at the last new moon in Virgo here, in order to make some things in our life here a reality and the way that it is that we might want. Which I think was very, very good. And because we recently, I think, have started to initiate more things in our life to improve them in a slow, stable, secure way here and put in the time and effort, what this full moon is all about here, September 2022, which this video is for, is about us just trusting and having faith that like we are getting it and that like our efforts are going to pay off and that God is on our side here, and is about us trying our best to be at calm and at peace with the process as we can, and to be as kind and forgiving and compassionate to ourselves and the other people that we're dealing with as we work these things through. Okay. And that's it, because that is all I'm going to say now in terms of the context of this time period. I'm just going to repeat that one more time without the astrological jargon here, so that you can get a better sense of what I think is going on here. So let me do that now. What I think is going on, the big picture context here of this full moon in Pisces here is that we're just trying to have more trust, hope, and faith that the time and effort that we're putting in a slow, stable, secure, thrifty, self-reliant way to improve our lives will eventually, whenever the divine thinks it's right, pay off in a big way that's going to be good for us. And it's also about us, like, yeah, now that our lives are different. And it's also about us too trying to be as calm and at peace throughout the process as we can, and to be as compassionate and forgiving to ourselves and other people as we move forward. Okay, yeah, and that's it. Because that's all that I'm going to say now in terms of the context of this time period. Here, I'm now just going to move into the details, into more of the details and the specifics here about this full moon and what's going on here and how it's going to play out. And to do that, I'm going to talk about the aspects that the full moon itself is making, but also, especially in this video, the ones happening around or right around the time of this full moon as well. And to do that, I think I'm going to start really quickly back at that full moon one more time and then move from there. So let's do that. I'm going to start here. Here's the full moon. Let me place it on the chart. The full moon in Pisces, 17 degrees here. What is that full moon about? Again, it's about us trying to have more trust, hope, and faith that whatever we recently initiated to improve our lives in a slow, stable, secure, self-reliant, thrifty way to take it to the next level will eventually pay off whenever the divine thinks it's time, and to be calm and compassionate towards ourselves and others in the process. Okay, that's where we are. But even though that's what I think is the thing, right? It is the thing that I've already said many times in this video. I should note, I think we're having difficulty really tapping into that trust, hope, faith, compassion, calmness, optimism, big picture, focus that it is that really needs to be cultivated at this time. I think we're having difficulty doing that because of a few other alignments that I want to mention. I think one of the first ones I want to mention is going to be Mars here in Gemini, because Mars recently entered pre-retrograde shadow about a week or so before this full moon. Okay, what is that all about? Well, what this means is that Mars is not in retrograde yet. It won't go retrograde till I believe about November of this year, so still another month or two away, but it is slowing down now, about to go retrograde. And when it does go retrograde, it's going to come back to this same spot here that it currently is at. Okay. That's what that means. I should also note as well that this is a little bit of a difficult thing, because what that means to me is that there's something currently going on, especially in regards to Gemini themes, that we're either not doing correctly or not seeing clearly here in some kind of way. Because if we were doing it right, Mars would have no need to retrograde over this area here as we move forward. Not only does it indicate that to me, but it also indicates that Mars is going to stay in Gemini for an extended period of time, months longer than it normally would stay in a sign here as well. That is also a little bit of a challenge. In what way is that a challenge? Well, Mars is the planet of action here. It likes to do things, get things done here. Gemini is a lot, sure, about thinking and communicating, but I think really beyond that, Gemini is a lot about feeling at ease, playful, lighthearted in our life, and feeling more comfortable and familiar with where we are in our situations, because Gemini really does correlate to our communities and the things that we know like the back of our hands. Not only that, but to me, Gemini in some way also correlates to like kind of finishing something up in some kind of way, being the last sign of a season, a mutable sign. And the last signs of seasons, right, indicate the completion of a season so that we can move on to the next. So what this means to me here with Mars entering pre-retrograde shadow in Gemini here is that we want to, and we think maybe we're ready to finish with something that we've been working on in our lives and feel more at ease and more lighthearted and more playful here in some kind of way, like we've finished or achieved something good for ourselves here, but that it hasn't really happened quite yet. That's going on, which could make us confused, with some of the Mercury influence having to do with the mind or unfocused. Here, our minds all over the place, are us focusing on the wrong things. Okay, so what does this mean to me? Now, to bring it all together so far in the context of this full moon, what this means to me is that at this full moon, we're trying to really cultivate more trust, hope, and faith here in our situations, and that we're going to be fine. And like eventually all our efforts are going to pay off whenever the divine sees fit in a really good way. That's going to make us happy. But even though we're trying to cultivate more trust, hope, and faith in the divine, and that everything's going to come together, it's really hard for us to have that trust, hope, and faith and to cultivate it, because we just want to be done with our situations. We don't want to have trust, hope, and faith, right? Having trust, hope, and faith means that our situations aren't complete yet, right? We don't want to have trust, hope, and faith because we just want our situations to be done. We just want to be at the finish line. We just want to be at the end result here. We just want to be able to rest and relax and have fun and be playful and not think about all of this other stuff that is going on here, which I think is making us a little anxious, nervous, and confused here in our mind all over the place. Not only is it really difficult for us to really get trust, hope, and faith because of that, but also too because of another thing going on as well, which is Mercury entering retrograde in Libra, like literally, I think like hours before this full moon in Pisces here as well. And that's also a difficult thing because this is a planet now actually in retrograde here. And it's also another Mercury, influence as well. What is the difficulty here? Well, Mercury going retrograde can also bring confusion in the mind, since Mercury is about the mind, or not seeing things clearly here and lacking focus mentally here, or focusing again also on the wrong things, which is hugely indicated here. Libra, to me, to be honest with you, is also a lot about completing things and starting other things, because Libra is the first sign of a season, being cardinal here. And also too, because Libra in particular being the first sign of fall, which is the hemisphere, right, that the astrology, the whole framework was created on. here is a lot about the harvesting things. And harvesting things is really all about the results of our efforts, of what we have been manifesting here as we move forward, okay? Which is still unclear. Not only that, but Libra too, when negative, right? There is obviously all the signs have positive interpretations, but Libra, when negative, can be too focused on external validation and external appearances, how it looks, how things look, how things seem. That can also be hard at this time. In addition to that, Libra, I should note, is also as well about an inner sense of balance, an inner sense of alignment here. And it's also about relationships and things where they're going as well. So what does that mean to me? I guess to continue bringing it together so far, what that means to me is that at this full moon in Pisces, we're really trying to cultivate like more trust, hope, and faith that whatever we're doing in our lives is going to work out in some kind of way, because God, the divine angels, spirit guides have our back and are going to help us as we move forward. But it's really hard to do because we just want our situations to be done already. We just want to be at the final result. We don't want to need hope and faith. And because we just want to relax and be easy and be at ease here in our situations, but also because we're really confused and uncertain about what we're harvesting and what we're manifesting and how things are going to play out. And because we're not seeing any external validation that things are actually going to work, that things are going to turn out well here. And because I think we're feeling horribly out of balance, like the longer we have to wait to get these answers that are very unclear here. And because I think there's a lot of questions about relationships too. We just don't know here what relationships are going to do and how they fit into all of this and what we really want and feel about relationships as well. I think there's also a lot of confusion there as well. Again, bringing anxiousness, nervousness, anxiety, our mind being all over the place, and maybe us just not focusing on the right things here. That's hard. Okay. But even though that's difficult, I should note, I do think that there is still like an internal prompting somewhere within our soul that's really trying to get us out of that lower way of thinking, because the thinking is not right and the logic is not right now with this going on. I think there's still an internal prompting, and I think it's more subconscious within us really trying to get us out of that and out of the negativity and towards this different, more faithful, hopeful, calm experience. And that is because of the next alignment that I want to mention here. That's actually with this full moon. Okay, this full moon in Pisces is making a sextile over here to the North Node and Uranus here in Taurus. And I do like this because it is a sextile, and I just personally always interpret sextiles in a positive way. Okay, what is this all about? Well, the full moon is in Pisces, again, about the trust, hope, and faith, kindness, compassion, etc. here. And Taurus is a lot about calm and ease as well, and letting things come to you, waiting to receive, with Taurus being a Venus-ruled sign here. And it's also about stability and security here that we're trying to get. And Uranus could be about things we're realizing suddenly and unexpectedly, with Uranus being the planet of the sudden and unexpected and having to do as well with the higher mind. Okay. So what does that mean to me? To continue bringing it together so far, what this means to me is that at this full moon in Pisces, like we're really trying to cultivate more trust, hope, and faith, and whatever is going on in our lives and whatever has recently been initiated, that like God, the divine spirit, is going to take care of it in some kind of positive way in our behalf here as we move forward, and to be calm and at peace with the process. But it's really hard because we don't want to wait for the divine to do whatever the divine's going to do. We just want to be done already, and we just want to be at ease in our situations and to have fun in our situations here. And because we're focusing too much on external appearances in our situation and external results, that's going on, and because we're feeling out of balance and worried about relationships, which we're very confused about, making us really frustrated and anxious here and uncertain, and our minds all over the place. But even though it's hard for us to cultivate like this sense of trust and faith, I think there's something really deep down in our subconscious, especially because Pisces is a sign kind of the subconscious, being a water sign, that's really trying to nudge us in this different direction. There's a part of us in our subconscious that sees that we're focusing on the wrong things and nervous and anxious, and really trying to call us in a more hopeful direction to be more calm, to be more at peace, to be more stable and secure, which I think we are able to achieve perhaps suddenly and unexpectedly in the midst of all of this stuff as a result. Especially too because of the next alignment that I want to mention, which is the fact that this full moon is conjunct Neptune here, and Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, meaning that it's correlated here to this sign and at home there. Okay, and when we get a full moon here conjunct the ruler of the sign that it's in, to me it brings an extra help or an extra dose of like what that sign is here as we move forward. And of course, Pisces is about the trust, hope, and faith. Not only that, but I should also note two other things about Pisces I didn't mention earlier, is that it's also about releasing the past, releasing negativity, being the last sign of the zodiac, and kind of washing that away here with it being a water sign. So what that means to me, to continue bringing it together here, is that we're trying to cultivate trust, hope, and faith and our efforts and whatever's going on, and that's going to work out fine, and that God's got our back here in the angels and the spirit guides or whatever. But it's really hard for us to do because we don't want to have trust, hope, and faith. We just want to be done with our situations. We just want to take it easy here. And because we're focusing too much on external situations and external validation here and not on the divine and on relationships and how they're playing out, which we're really confused about here, and we're not seeing the results that we might want to see here, which is making us anxious and frustrated and all over the place here. And maybe even I should note, have some weird conversations with people that are just like strange. But even though like there's a lot of issues going on here, I think something within our soul and our subconscious, like in our intuition, keeps trying to guide us gently and like encourage us more towards this like higher spiritual, intuitive, kind, compassionate, and faithful approach, which I think we unexpectedly start to get, which helps us to release and wash away a little bit of the negativity and reliance on external factors, which I believe is very, very good, bringing healing with the Neptune healing to our soul. Okay. But even though I should note, I do believe that this is what happens. I do believe that our soul is calling us, and spirit and the divine is calling us to like deepen our trust, hope, and faith here in the divine, and that we do start to get it. I will say this, I'm just a little skeptical. I'm a little skeptical about whether or not we'll be able to hold on to more permanently this trust, hope, and faith that we begin to arrive at this full moon in Pisces. And the reason why I'm very skeptical about whether or not we'll be able to maintain long-term this trust, hope, and faith, which is needed, especially until Mars actually goes retrograde November, 2 months from now, when we'll start to see the results of our efforts. The reason why I think we may struggle to permanently embrace this trust, hope, and faith is because Neptune is a little bit of a mixed bag at times, being a planet that is further away from where we live. And Neptune can indicate still things not being that clear, or us still being hazy on some things, and because of the sextile as well that we just had to the North Node in Uranus. And while I do like sextiles can indicate things that like kind of come too easily, or that we take for granted or don't realize are happening. That could be going on here. Okay, not only am I a little skeptical of how permanent this posture of hope and faith is, because Neptune can be a little funny like that and a little fuzzy, and sextiles can indicate this happening a little too easily and naturally without us being aware of it. But also too, because you have to remember Mercury is still retrograde and will be for the next 3 weeks, which it just started, which indicates something being an issue and not being worked out fully within our souls in the way that we need. And Mars, of course, is in pre-retrograde shadow here, which is also not that great. And because we are going to have a hard alignment or two in the next week or so after this, which includes Mars squaring Venus in Virgo, a sign it doesn't really like to be in, while Mars is retrograde, in pre-retrograde shadow, here, and Venus trine Uranus and things like that. So what that means to me now, I guess, to bring it together so far, is that we are at this full moon trying to cultivate more trust, hope, and faith that like the divine is going to fix our situations and handle them for us in a positive way by the end of it all. Okay, that's what this full moon is about, but it's really, really hard for us to do. It's really hard for us to cultivate this trust, hope, and faith because we just want to be done with our situations and relax and at ease and having fun without worrying about all this stuff. And also because we're too focused on external validation in our situation, which I don't think we're getting. We're not really seeing our situations improve, and we're too worried about relationships and our mind's all over the place. That's hard, okay? Yeah. Trying to have trust, hope, and faith, it's hard. But even though it's hard for us to have the trust, hope, and faith, I think our soul keeps kind of nudging us in that direction to like believe and to relax and to be calm. And I think we do suddenly and unexpectedly start to relax and be calm and trust the process here, which is very, very, very good, and wash away the negativity. But even though that's going on, I just don't think that this posture of trust, hope, and faith is permanent. I really don't. And I think that it's something that can be lost very easily and very, very quickly here in the week or two, the next 14 days, I suppose, after this full moon in Pisces, that we need to be aware of. Why do we need to be aware of that? Well, when you lose trust, hope, and faith in the divine, what can happen here is that you either don't do anything with your situation because you're nervous and paralyzed, or really the problem we're going to have more with the Venus and Virgo is that we try to control too much, right? When we don't have trust and faith that we're on the right track and that things are going to be fine, we control too much. We push too hard here, we burn ourselves out, and we get too critical of ourselves and others, which can create health problems here with the Mercury stuff going on. Mercury is planet of health here, and can create arguments and relationship issues and communications after this point as well that we're going to need to be aware of, okay? And because I don't think that this posture of trust, hope, and faith in the divine is permanent and can cause us to sabotage our situations or other people to sabotage our situations by over-controlling, over-fixing here, or getting in arguments, what is the advice that I want to give you? I think the advice that I want to give you is first of all, to be conscious, to be consciously aware, to bring into consciousness just how much trust, hope, and faith is needed from here on out, because no amount of controlling and forcing your situation is going to work while Mercury is retrograde in particular to make good things manifest. You know, we're in this until November at the very earliest when Mars goes retrograde before we know what's what. So I think the advice is to consciously be aware that trust, hope, and faith is needed here, and also to consciously cultivate trust, hope, and faith, and create strategies or practices throughout at least probably the next 2 months in which we can get in a space of trust, hope, and faith and kindness and compassion for others here, and don't fall backwards and revert out of it. Not only is that the advice, but too, with Mercury retrograde in Libra, I think the advice is also to reserve judgment, right? Libra is a sign of law, of the court systems, of judges, of judging things. And Mercury kind of means to hold off because we're not clear. So I think another piece of advice here is for you to reserve judgment on your situation and on what's going on until the actual judgment day, you know, until God judges and the universe judges what's going on, which again is not really going to be until November of this year at the very earliest, when Mars goes retrograde after a solar eclipse in Scorpio. Okay, as we move forward. All right, and I think that's it. That's all that I want to mention, because that's all that I want to mention in this video. I'm now just going to repeat those things one more time without the astrological jargon so that you can get a better sense of what I think is going on here. So let me do that now. What I think is going on at this full moon in Pisces is that we're trying to really cultivate more trust, hope, and faith and in the divine, that like our situations are going to work out, and that the divine has got our back and is going to bring good things to us in the right time here. And that's wonderful. But even though that's wonderful, we're really having difficulty cultivating that trust, hope, and faith that it is that we need. And we're having difficulty cultivating it because we just want to be done with these situations and to relax and be at ease and to have fun. Yet again, it's also really difficult for us to do that because I think we're focusing on the wrong things, and we're focusing too much on external validation and what our situation looks like here, and on relationships here, that which are a bit confusing and uncertain at this time, which is hard here, and because everything feels out of alignment and because we're like confused and our mind is all over the place. Okay, but even though we're having a really hard time cultivating trust, hope, and faith, I think there continues to be like a small nudging of our soul and of spirit, really trying to prompt us and encourage us gently and softly and sweetly in this more hopeful and faithful direction here. And I think for a minute, we start to go with that hopeful part of our soul and cultivate trust, hope, and faith in the divine and in our situations to work out whenever they do in a positive way, perhaps suddenly and unexpectedly, and to release some of the negativity and the monkey mind. But even though we are, I think, sometime around this full moon, able to cultivate some semblance of trust, hope, and faith, and optimism and compassion that everything is going to be fine, I think there is a real tendency to lose that much more easily than we might think, and to devolve back into a lack of faith, which can lead us to overly control our situations and try too hard and be too exacting and get too mad at other people for what they are and are not doing and isn't working, or for other people to get mad at us, which can create arguments, self-sabotage, even burnout and health issues, especially in the next 14 days, 2 weeks after this. And because we are getting some semblance of trust, hope, and faith, but it's not permanent, I don't think, and can create real issues later on. What I think we need to do at this full moon is to just be conscious of this trust, hope, and faith that we are getting, and that we can lose it, and to not only be conscious of it, but to come up with strategies more consciously to help us cultivate trust, hope, and faith and keep with it here over the course of the next few weeks here, and to bring us back to that place, a regular practice, so that we don't lose it later on and create all these issues. Not only at this full moon do we need to be conscious of the trust, hope, and faith and how needed it is, and create strategies to sustain it so that we don't lose it over the course of the next month and a half or so, few weeks. But I think we also need to consciously choose to reserve judgment, our own judgment on our situations and how they're going to play out until the very end, until our situations finally end and until the divine judges it, later on, which really isn't going to be until November of this year at the very earliest, when Mars actually does go retrograde in Gemini. But to be honest, is probably more so March of next year, once Mars retrograde finishes, another Mercury retrograde finishes in Capricorn here, and a lot of planets start to change signs. Okay. So that's what is going on there. Anything else that I want to say? Sure. Now I like to say, similar things to what I just said in this video, but in a different, more conversational way, because I think sometimes that can help with the understanding. So let me do that now. I think what I want to say is that at this point in our lives and at this point in the astrology, I think we really are working on things that are important to us in our lives that we feel are going to be good for us to take our lives to the next level and to make some new and better chapter of life that we've been working on for quite some time more seen and more visible and more solid. Because I think right now the new chapter in life is still very small and like hardly noticeable to the naked eye. So I think that's the first thing that I want to say, is that I think the majority of us really are working towards something important to improve our lives better and to make a new chapter in life more publicly seen. Okay, the next thing that I want to note is that even though I think that's what a lot of us have been doing, especially since April of this year, but really August was a significant moment, I believe that with this thing that we're initiating to improve our lives, we're either not seeing any results at all. We're not seeing any results at all. Or the results that we're seeing just don't look good, here about our situations, that I think is very discouraging and that I think is very frustrating here as well. Okay, so do you see this? To continue bringing it together, like a lot of us have been initiating something in our lives since April, but especially August, when I think it started to take more physical form to improve them and make them better and make a new chapter in life more significantly seen. But these things we've initiated, like either just don't look like they're working at all. They just don't, there's nothing going on. There's no success, nothing working. Or if they don't look like nothing's going on at all, they look like we're having setbacks, and it's just like roadblock after roadblock here that is very difficult. And what this full moon is really all about is about us cultivating more trust, hope, and faith that we're going to be fine if we just keep on keeping on. If we just keep on keeping on with our original intention and our original desire in a slow, stable, secure, and self-reliant way, which is what's been needed really all along. Okay. Not only is this full moon here to just trust and have faith that things are going to work out, but to trust the unseen, Pisces, over the seen, Libra and Mercury and Gemini, the air signs, to trust the unseen over the seen. Okay. So that's what's going on here, I think, in the astrology. We're initiating something good in our lives and slow, stable, secure, to make our lives better. We have really good intentions. We really want to do it, but it hasn't been paying off and yielding results, or we've been setback after setback after setback here. That's really discouraging here, that we just want to be done with and over with. And we have to cultivate more trust, hope, and faith that our God is going to see our efforts. The universe, the angels are going to see our efforts and are going to reward us later on, and that the unseen is more important than what is seen here, and that what is unseen is very beautiful and is going to be revealed later on. Okay? Because it's true, right? Like, we're not just trying, like the astrology, we're not just trying to cultivate that to like trick ourselves. Like, we're trying to cultivate that because it's true, because God, spirit, universe, angels, the divine is going to see the results of our hard efforts. If you've been slow, stable, secure, and steady this whole time, like, God is going to see it and reward it in some kind of way, November to March of this upcoming year. Hey, when Mars goes retrograde in Gemini, God is going to see it, which I should note was in the same place that the eclipses were in 2020 and 2021. Okay, because God is going to see it, the universe, angels, the divine, and is going to reward it here later on. And because the unseen is true, the unseen is more true than the seen at this time. And if you're judging your situation by what you can see at this time, you're really missing the point. You're missing what's actually going on here and what will actually occur. Okay, so do you see that? I think that's what is happening here. That's going on. And what could occur, right? Like, what could go wrong at this full moon is that we could cultivate trust, hope, and faith for a second, and then lose the trust, hope, and faith, and then stop with our situations altogether, right? Or sabotage them yet again, right? So what could happen is that we could really be trying at this full moon in Pisces to, like, what could be happening at this full moon in Pisces is that we're working on something that's really important to us to improve our lives, but it's either not paying off and yielding any result, or constant setback after setback. And what could happen is that we could lose trust, hope, and faith that it's going to work out after we get it briefly, and lose faith in the unseen over the seen, and then we could give up. And we could say, oh, I'm just going to give up. My situation isn't working. I've been trying so hard. God must hate me. Never going to work. And then we could give up here and either not do anything more with our situations, or we could sabotage them by working too hard or creating arguments here, or other people creating arguments with us. And why is that a problem? Well, because the experience is just crappy, right? Like, losing faith and giving up, and then like getting in arguments doesn't feel good. Okay, not only is that bad because it doesn't feel good, it's also bad too because if you give up now on your situation because it doesn't seem like it's working, then you're never going to get the good stuff, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you give up now on whatever you started in August because it's just taking too much time to manifest and it doesn't look like anything's happening in my life, especially not in a positive way, then you know what, you're right. Nothing is going to happen in your life. Nothing is going to come together in a positive way because you're not going to finish the drill, in the way that it needs. So that's what you need to realize here. We're initiating something in our lives, especially from April, but especially since August, which I think are related. It's going fine. from a spiritual perspective, but even though it's going fine, we can't see it working at all. And a matter of fact, what we're seeing is negative things happening. And because it's going fine in the spiritual, but in the physical 3D realm, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere or looks like it's falling backwards, we could be losing trust, hope, and faith, even if we get it for a little minute. And us losing trust, hope, and faith, even if we experience it for just a little minute, us losing trust, hope, and faith and not holding on to the trust, hope, and faith is a real problem, because it can create us giving up altogether or sabotaging our situations or stressing ourselves out or getting in arguments. And that is just a bad experience. It just feels bad to have that happen and is unnecessary. And because that is going to create, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's going to create the thing we thought was going to happen anyways, when in reality, we're doing much better than we think we are. And Spirit and the divine knows that, okay? And is privy to that in a way that we aren't, okay? What else do I want to say here about this full moon? You know, maybe to put it in another way, I think a lot of times what happens, or I think a lot of things that sometimes people believe, you know, sometimes people believe, or that I've heard just said, you know, from my own experience, my own life, other people, is that I think there's this mindset that people in general just have, that like, if I'm doing something and if it was really meant to be, right? Like if I'm doing something that's important to me and if it's really meant to be, it would just happen easily. It would just happen naturally here in some kind of way. Like I think that's a belief that a lot of people have. And I think in some instances that is true. I think that my opinion is that like nothing is true all the time. Like nothing is true all the time, but everything is true some of the time. And my thought is that that phrase, that if I was where I needed to be, if I was doing something right, it would be working out, is not true right now. Maybe another time, it's not true right now. I think that what is going on at this time in the astrology is that we are doing something right, especially if it's slow, stable, secure, self-reliant. We are doing something right here, but it's not yielding the results, and in the physical appearance kind of way. And that doesn't mean that what we're doing is wrong. It just means we need to give it more time, okay? Not everything that's good in life comes easy. Not everything that's good in life comes easy, okay? So do you see this? Sometimes when you're doing something right and good for yourself, you don't see the results right away. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means you need to give it more time and have trust, hope, and faith that things are going to work out. Okay? And I don't really know where like a lot of people, society, like got this idea of like, if I was doing the right thing, everything would work out naturally. Because I remember when I was a kid, at least with like my parents and like the kind of personalities they have, like my parents were always like, no, if you want something good, you got to put in the effort. You got to put in the work in order to make it happen, you know, and like, you want to do good in school, you got to study and put in the grades, you know, and earn it. And so I don't know where somehow this idea like came that like, oh, if, you know, we were really doing the right thing, it would happen easily. Like sometimes when you're doing the right thing, it's hard and it takes effort, but the effort doesn't, it's hard and it takes effort and it takes time. It just takes time for things to work. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means you need to be calm throughout the process and not stress out about the process here as you move onwards. Okay. And to give your situation more time to like fully play out before making decisions and final judgments and conclusions here. And not only, I think, is the message of this full moon in Pisces to like reserve judgment on like how these situations are going to play out until November or whatever, like, and until they actually end. But I think to also reserve final decisions, you know, about your situations and about your relationships too, you know, and how they fit in as well until that time, and until you, you know, really see people and things for what they are as well, and get the clarity that you need. And maybe that's a piece of advice that some of you might need, because some of you might be like, well, but I've got decisions that I need to make about relationships, and especially with the Mercury retrograde in Libra at this time. And it's like, well, you might have decisions you need to make about relationships, but do they need to be made right now? You can probably, wait to make a lot of these in November. Here when you'll be more clear on a lot of things. And in between now and November, I think you just need to try to tap into what the divine wants, and your intuition and a higher perspective on the matter before, really ending or beginning something, or making it permanent and taking it to the next level. Okay, and I think that's all I'm going to say there. Because that's it, I'm now just going to look at your inside degrees here. The inside degrees are not written by me. They were written by another person named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled the meanings for each of the degrees from spirit here. But I like to look at these to give you like another perspective other than my own on the current astrology and energy. They're up here on the screen. The full moon is at 17 degrees here in Pisces, but sometimes the ones before and after are also relevant. Here, so I've got those up on the screen. To be honest with you, like I wasn't like the biggest fan of these for this energy and what we're going through, because there's a lot of things retrograde going on, which can make this really funny, because these are like a little too optimistic for the astrology at the moment. But please feel free to read them if you like 16, 17, 18 and pause the video. And because I'm not really like the biggest fan of these, I'm just going to go through them very briefly and mention a few things. And I think I want to go with 17 Pisces here. 17 Pisces says, held as a cherished one in the womb of the world, a seed bearer for the future, you are inwardly alive to multisensory faculties and worlds within worlds. An earth call to let the future resonate as it must, profoundly moved by the human drama. Okay, so what does this mean to me so far? What this means to me is that there is a need to understand at this full moon in Pisces that God has got our back. Held as a cherished one in the womb of the world to me means protected, that we are protected by the divine here within our situations, especially if we have the correct approach and pure intention, I think, which, is slow, stable, secure, thrifty, self-reliant. Okay, not only do we need to trust that God has got our back and that the divine is going to protect us here, but that whatever we're doing now is the perfect seed, right? Is the perfect seed, to create good things for the future, and that we'll see it sprout in due time, in a good way. Okay, so I think that's what that means. And then we get to the next part of it that says radically other, immensely in exile, and in the meantime making the very most of chance to fathom the ways of the earth and the dazzling idiosyncrasies of the human species. So what that means to me here is that even though we're trying to cultivate and need to cultivate and are feeling a little bit at this full moon that the divine is going to protect us and has our back, and that what we're doing now is like a beautiful, healthy seed to bear a great future later on. I think there's a part of us that still doesn't feel complete, that doesn't feel like it's there yet and entirely where it needs to be, and that still feels kind of alone in the process here, or out to drift, right? An exile, somewhere else, not connected exactly to our situations, which is very, very hard here, that we're trying to make the very most of. Okay. Then we get to Pisces 18. It says gifted with deep and subtle qualities that are germinating in the subconscious and coming into their own, transported into inner worlds to dream, imagine, and conceive from a pure place. Then we get this, disengaged with phenomenal appearances, staying just apart. Much that goes on here stays under and percolates timelessly. So what that means to me, because these 2 degrees to me are very similar, is that at this full moon in Pisces, there is something good going on. I hope you all know that there is something good going on with our situations. God, the divine universe, is protecting us. And our actions, especially if we're continuing in a slow, stable, secure, are going to work and are going to bear beautiful fruit here that's going on, and that we sense it in our subconscious. But even though something really good is going on with the divine and behind the scenes that we're sensing in our subconscious here, it's just not manifesting externally. And we're feeling disconnected from everything and alone. See, they mean the same thing to me. That's just very hard. And what we need to do is make the very most of this weird space in the meantime here, and stop and disengage ourselves from appearances, from external appearances here, and to stay apart and to cultivate, I think, like more hope, you know, that things are going to work out, and to give the creative forces time. Like deep down in their creative forces work unceasingly, like to give the divine like time to just work things out in our favor. So I think that's all I'll say there. I didn't really have anything unique to add from that. But there's that. Now I'm just going to pull your card for this time period. Okay, your card for this time period is the Hierophant upright here, and we've got the Ten of Pentacles upright at the bottom of the deck. You know, the Hierophant is typically, right, the high priest, you know, referred to like a religious leader here. And when I think religious leader, like religion to me is really all about beliefs, like whatever you believe about the world and your worldview, you know, which doesn't have to, you know, be traditional or dogmatic, you know, or things like that. So I think that part of the message about this of this full moon is to maybe formulate different beliefs about yourself and your life and the world and the way that world works, and to form different beliefs that are more open, you know, and compassionate, and that have a larger worldview here, and that are more intuitive, right, and more just like in touch with the divine and a higher purpose here at this time. So I think that there's a lot of that. Hey, because our beliefs, right, can really matter, you know, because they really affect a lot of how we behave in our lives. So I think that's part of it. Like some of you need to change your beliefs and believe different things, and believe that the unseen is greater than the seen, and that good things are coming for you, whether you see it or not, and to just hold true to that. Another thing as well that I get from these is also a message of like growing up a little bit and like being a little more mature, because the Hierophant is usually too about initiations from one phase of life into another phase of life here. And the Ten of Pentacles to me is also about like being like a wise old energy here, and about like success and legacy. So I think another message is not only, some of you need to change your beliefs. Right, especially with Mars retrograde and Gemini, and beliefs are going to be a huge thing later this year, but like a lot of you need to change your beliefs to be more open-minded to accepting the mysteries of the divine, right, and to having hope and faith and believing more in the unseen and of the intuition too. But a lot of you may also need to develop a more mature perspective about life and how life works. And to me, a more mature perspective of life is one that believes more in long-term results instead of short-term gain, you know. When we're younger, we want results now. When you're kids, right? When we're a kid, we want cookies now. I don't want to wait until after dinner to get cookies. But like when we're older, we have a more mature perspective of like the work and the time and what's good for our health and what's not. And so I think that's another message here too, is like this desire to want things faster, quicker is really like kind of a little immature, you know, and to give up, and this feeling of like I need external validation to know that I'm on the right path is like a little immature here, especially too, right, with the Mars and Gemini. Like so many things tie back to the Mars and Gemini, because Gemini is like kind of childlike. Here we need different belief systems that are more mature, more wise, you know, with the uncertainties and complexities of the universe here, and that are more optimistic. Okay. Because having a belief system, maybe that's immature, is not helping anyone. You know, it's not helping you. Like, what's the point of having a belief system that's just going to make you miserable? You know, and that just isn't going to pay off. So I think there's part of that here too that's going on. And then the Ten of Pentacles, right, also being about legacy and effort over time. I think that another message here too is not only that there's a need this time period to like get your beliefs higher and to realize that there's a totally different way of looking at the world than you might imagine, that's more mature here and favors more of the unseen over the seen. And not only is there a need to get rid of this desire for like quick results and external validation here, but maybe there's also a need to like give yourself more time for your situations to play out here. And another message I'm getting is to focus on the bigger picture here and on the why that you're doing all of this. Like, I think that's another message too. Is also what might also help is to connect to your why and the bigger picture here, because connecting to why you're doing this thing that you're doing or why you're initiating it, I think that might also help you to be able to carry through with all of this stuff as well. And when I say to connect to your why, I don't mean physical appearances of like, well, I'm doing this because I want this person in my life to be this way. To think bigger. There's a need to think beyond, the 3D, think beyond people and physical experiences into something else. Because I think also forming different beliefs that are more intuitive and higher and mature based on long-term results and trusting in the unseen, and then connecting to a higher purpose of like why you're going through all of this, I think that is also going to help you weather some of these like little storms here and not fall back into some of these traps that might be going on here at this time, and create some kind of legacy here and give things more time to play themselves out. Okay. And I think that's it. That's all I have to say here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that was helpful for you. I hope that you all have a good full moon. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube, share it with your friends, your comment below, and I will talk to you on the next one 2 weeks from now at the new moon in Libra. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you then.